Hello, and this is another presentation by Professor Choi on, in this case, student financial advice. All right, so first I want to tell you a little bit about me. I came from another country, in this case, Cuba, back in the year 1997, and I ended up in Miami, Florida, and my family did not have much money for me to go to school. So I was one of those students that was constantly looking for a way to go through school without any money. So I was the guy who would normally apply to everything financial aid could offer. Student loans, I took some. Um, I was the one trying to figure out every scholarship out there that I could apply for, and I did it. So I was the one asking the questions, and I was the one going around, and I was the one always trying to figure out how to get through school. So now here's a plan though that I kind of always had in my mind because I knew it was going to work for me and it did. And I know it works for most people as well. So, by the way, before I get to the plan, I also need everyone to understand that education, I don't think is for everyone. I do think everyone should have more education. In other words, everyone should learn more about the things that they need to learn in order to be more efficient and productive at whatever they're doing. But going in the educational route, aka getting an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or maybe a PhD, may not be the solution for everyone. It is the solution for most people, and it is a proven solution to get to middle class in this country. So, in the United States. So, anyway, here's the plan. If you can go to school for free, or someone's willing to pay you for your education through scholarships or other, then go ahead and take that because investing on yourself is the best investment in the world. If you have to pay for it and you don't really have the money, then go ahead and borrow it because it is still the best investment in the world. Now, it is not only proven to be the best investment in the world, by the way, but it is historically been a way to get out of a lot of things. So it's very useful to have an education, not only because of the knowledge that you obtain, but also because, well, it makes you more money. All right, so here's the plan. The first plan is to figure out how to get your education. Second portion is if you don't have a lot of money, then you may have accumulated some student loans. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those, how they work, and then how to get out of debt quickly. That's plan number 3. And then plan number 4 is I'm going to teach you a little bit about job hunting and things of that sort. And then plan number 5 is when you start saving and investing. Because usually when you go the educational route, you have to spend so much money and time getting your education that investing and savings is kind of like second for you at the time. And that's the way it should be, unless, again, you have somebody who can pay for all your education. So, first of all, let's try to address the question, is it worth getting a degree today? I strongly believe that the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And here's some data. On average, a person who gets a bachelor's degree will make at least $500,000 more than a person that only has a high school diploma by the time they both retire. That even takes into account the fact that you need to spend about 4 years on your studies and you're barely going to be working while that happens. So that takes into account the fact that if somebody graduates from high school and they go straight into the workforce, they will be making money while you're spending money on education. Now, they're going to be ahead if somebody who's in high school and went to work, they're going to be ahead until about the age of 30 or 30 something if you start right away. And then by mid 30s, you're going to pass them and then keep going. So, is it worth getting a degree? Absolutely. Now, people with higher grades, by the way, also make about 20% more money on average compared to people with average grades. So if you happen to be a good student on top of a student, then that is useful. All right, now let me show you a data graph that will help you understand why it's so useful to get a degree. This is information that I've been teaching my students for at least a decade now, and I've been teaching in college for at least 10 years. And this is information that I always cover in my classes because I want to make sure that they understand that education will have positive outcomes for you. This is created by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is the agency in the US in charge of coming up with labor information. It's a relationship between your level of education, higher here is a higher level of education, and your degree, so your level of education in degree, and unemployment rates and income attainments. In this case, they're talking about median weekly earnings. All right, so if you have less than a high school diploma, the unemployment rate is high compared to the average. And again, the average is the number that was taken at the time that they did this particular graph. So in this case, the average was around 3.2. So if you have less than a high school diploma, notice that your unemployment rate is pretty much almost twice the average. Notice that the income that you're expected to make per week is not much at all. Now, if you graduate high school, then notice that the unemployment rate goes down for those people who graduate high school and the income goes up. So if you don't graduate, if you just go to high school, the expected income is $730 per week. And let me try to turn that into a yearly income so we can visualize it. So if I make $730 a week, I multiply that times 52 weeks in a year, and that's how much money you're expected to make if you don't do anything, if you just graduate high school. Okay? By the way, that is pre-tax money, so you got to take away the money you got to send to Uncle Sam. All right. Notice that if you get some college and no degree, there's still benefits to that. Unemployment rate goes down on average. And notice that the income bumps up a little. If you get an associate degree, notice that the unemployment rate goes down again, and notice that the income goes up a little more. All right, if you get your bachelor's degree, notice that again, the unemployment rate goes down again. And now there's a huge bump in income to $11.98 a week. If you have a master's degree, notice that the unemployment rate again goes down a little, and there goes that income increasing again. All right, if you get a professional or a doctorate degree, notice that the unemployment rate is about the same, and the income is about the same, and notice that it's basically higher than all of the others. So what this graph basically shows is that a higher degree gives you lower unemployment rates and higher income rates. Now let's just take this number right here, by the way, for the bachelor's degree. Notice that that number is $11.98. $11.98 times 52 weeks in a year. So that number is about $62,000. And that is the difference in amount of money that you're going to be making if you're a high school graduate on average, or if you are somebody with a bachelor's degree on average. Remember that when you graduate with your bachelor's degree, you're not going to be making average right away because you just started. So it takes a little while to get to average. But the idea here is that if you have only a high school diploma, this is the average for most people. And if you have a bachelor's degree, this is a number. And notice that it's almost twice as much. So that basically means that even if you take 4 years to get your degree, by the time you start, you're going to start not only ahead of somebody with a high school diploma, but you're going to surpass them pretty quickly at some point because you're making almost twice as much as they do. All right, so anyway, hopefully that explains to you how education is in fact good for you. Now, one of the things that you always need to take into account though is what degree do you really want to study? Confucius said, choose a job you love and you will never work a day in your life. And he was probably right. So in other words, if you pick somebody that you like to do, if you pick something that you like to do, then you're not really going to go to work every morning. You're just going to get up and go do what you like to do. So I agree with that. you should be picking something that you like to do. But because we live in a society where money is in fact a necessity, it's not like we can just sit around and do what we like, then I rather you also pick something that you like and that is going to make you enough money to be to have the lifestyle that you're interested in. The Occupational Outlook Handbook by the Bureau of Labor Statistics will give you a bit of an idea of the expected salary that you're supposed to have when you pick a particular career. So let me show you how that looks, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So the Occupational Outlook Handbook is posted on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, which is www.bls.gov. If you come down here to the bottom right here, it says Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's a really good book to look over different careers and how much they pay. Notice that they have some quick links over here for occupations that are either highest pay, if that's what you're interested on, fastest growing, which basically means that the expectation of job creation is higher than others, and most new jobs projected. So if you're interested on those things right away. Now, let's say that you're interested on becoming a teacher. So you come over here, it says education, click on that. And let's say that you want to become a high school teacher. Click on that. Okay, so right here they have a video telling you a little bit about what high school teachers do. Then they also have the 2018 median pay for high school teachers. And they tell you about how many jobs are needed and how quickly these sort of jobs are growing and the expected employment change between the year 2018 and 2028. All right. It tells you what teachers do, the type of work environment, how much you get paid, etc., the outlook and things of that sort. So notice that up here you also have other tabs that you can click on, and it will give you a better idea, again, on the same sort of questions that you had over here, but they have a more kind of like spread out data on that, so you can learn a little bit more about the type of career that you're interested in. All right. Again, let's go back to the beginning and say, well, maybe you want to be an architect. So click right here where it says architecture and engineering. And you want to be an architect, right here. Okay. So again, it tells you a little bit about the median pay for those people. It tells you the type of degree that you need, the work experience. All right. Notice that it says it's growing at around 8% a year. This is the employment change. There's a little video here to tell you a bit about architects. Okay. This is the work environment. How to become one. It tells you a little bit about what type of licensing do you need in order to become an architect, the type of skills that you're supposed to have. Right here, it tells you a little bit about the pay for architects. It tells you here about, again, the job outlook for that. All right. So this is, again, called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's extremely useful to kind of browse and learn a little bit more about your career. This is created by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US, which is the agency in charge of collecting and keeping this sort of information. All right. So the next question after that is, how much money should you borrow in case that nobody wants to pay for education, and which is highly likely, by the way, or you don't have enough money to go and get your education. So as I mentioned before, I would much rather you don't have to borrow anything. So look for scholarships, look for your parents, ask your grandma for money. If you do have to borrow, make sure you do only for the purpose of going to school and nothing else. And this is actually one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is when money becomes accessible to them, they just go crazy with borrowing. So you can get into a lot of debt very easily when you don't have to pay it back immediately. And you would eventually have to pay it, by the way. So you don't want to get into too much debt that you don't need. All right, so here's a bit of a strategy that I came up with. Once you have figured out how much you're expected to make, then you can figure out how much you can borrow. So my recommendation is borrow in total for a 4-year degree only what you think you're going to make in salary on 1 year. Now, let me show you a bit about the math on that. So according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median salary for a high school teacher is $55,000. Then you should only borrow about $55,000. So how much? Why is it that I'm saying that you should only borrow about $55,000? Again, this number here has to do with the medium salary. So if your medium salary is expected to be 60,000, then try not to borrow any more than 60,000. If your medium salary is expected to be 70,000, then try not to borrow any more than 70,000. And if it's expected to be 40,000, then try not to borrow any more than 40,000 in total for your 4-year degree. Now, how do I come up with that math? Well, here's the thing. If you have a $55,000 loan at a 6% interest rate, and you're gonna pay it over 10 years, and this is how student loans are usually repaid. They usually are put on a 10-year repayment plan. And last time I checked, the interest rate for this was around 6%. So that's gonna put you on a payment of around $620 a month. All right, let me show you a tool in Excel that helps you calculate that. Now the tool is called the loan amortization table. So let's say that you were going to borrow $55,000 and you're going to pay 6% interest over 10 years. We're going to make 12 payments a year because we're going to pay once a year. No extra payments. All right. So notice up here is the amount of money that you're going to be paying every month for this loan. This number here, 610 and 61. All right, so here's the loan amount, here's the interest rate. This is the amount of years that you're gonna be paying, 12 payments a year. This is a monthly payment that you should expect for that. Good so far? All right, so again, you could do this loan amortization table for a different loan and a different payment. Now let me show you why this number here is an okay number with the salary of $55,000 a year. So on a $55,000 salary, let's assume that 20% of that money goes to taxes. So your net income is going to be around $3,500 a month. So what I did was I took $55,000 and subtracted 20% for taxes, and then whatever was left on from there, I divided it by 12, and you end up with about $3,500 a month. So your debt payment for this loan is going to stay at around 15% of your income, because 620 is around 15% of $3,500 a month, which is a sort of manageable amount. So if you got to pay in debt about 15% of your income, that's not too bad. That will still allow you to buy a house, that will still allow you to get a car, etc., etc. So it is a sort of manageable amount. The problem becomes when you borrow too much money and you don't make as much money. So in other words, when the amount of money that you borrow is way too large compared to the amount of money that you make every month. So now it's important to remember, by the way, that if you're entry level, you're not going to be making the salary that is medium, because medium is kind of like halfway through the time that you've been working on this. All right, so when do you have to start paying your student loans if you get into student loans? Well, you're going to have to start paying them 6 months after your graduation rate. There are two basic types of loans that the government allows you to get in order for you to go to school. You have your subsidized loans. If you have a subsidized loan, what it basically means is that the government has been paying your interest on behalf of you, and therefore when you get your loan amount 6 months after you graduate, you're only going to owe the principal, because the government has been paying for you the interest all that time that you were in school. So you don't have any accumulated interest. If you get an unsubsidized loan, then when you get your loan amount at the end, after the 6 months after you graduate, you're going to notice that the amount of money that you owe is going to be greater than the amount of money that you borrow. And that's because an unsubsidized loan also accumulates interest payments, because you were not making interest payments as you were studying. And because it was unsubsidized, that person has been keeping track of the interest and they have been adding it to your loan. All right. Now, the way student loans work as of the year 2020 in the US is you get a loan through a bank but you are insured by the US government, which basically means that if you default on your student loans, in other words, if you don't pay your student loans, then the bank will collect the money from the federal government, but now you owe the money to the federal government. All right? So the federal government's collection agency is the Internal Revenue Service. So if you default on student loans, it would follow you around like taxes. So please do not default on student loans. It is the same as having tax debt, and it will never go away. All right? So please make every effort you can to settle a debt payment with the bank. Make it lower, make it longer, make it something, refinance it. But try not to default, because if you default, then now you have to deal with the IRS for a long time. All right. So, how about getting a job? Well, at some point you need to consider a part-time job or an internship job or something of that sort. And here's the problem. Today, we have lots and lots of people out there who are no longer willing to hire you simply because you have a degree from a highfalutin university or a really good name, because they have learned that sometimes plenty of people graduate from these places and they're just not ready for the workforce. As a consequence of that, the majority of people that are being hired today pretty quickly are people that are not just good at school, but good at multiple things. In other words, it's a person that is very well rounded. All right. So here's some recommendations. If you don't get a part-time job, you need to join some kind of club. Okay. You need to join clubs like PTK at our school, or maybe SGA, or something like PBL, FBLA, or any other club, because one of the things that is going to do is it's going to show a potential employer that you are willing and able to do things above and beyond just what you basically need to do. Okay? It would also allow you to put more things on your resume, because you would say, okay, I've accomplished this on top of getting my degree. I would also recommend that you get a mentor in the field, somebody who's already been successful at getting the degree and somebody who's been successful at getting a job in the field, and or get a professor to talk to that knows about the field so they can guide you and tell you about the realities of that particular field. Notice that 50% of graduates today end up with a job outside of the field of study. And this is data, again, coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So if you graduate today in the US, 50% of the people end up in a job outside of that career that they selected. So don't feel bad if this is you. You simply need to learn and adapt and move on. All right? And then never quit on what you really want to do, because the opportunity might be there across the street. You just have to kind of keep going back to what you really wanted to do. All right, now let's talk a little bit about savings. I happen to know plenty of people, by the way, that make a lot of money, and they have the same problems as people that make little money. And the reason for that is because they make a lot of money, but they spend a lot of money. All right, there are two portions to building wealth. All right, so if you want to build wealth over time, there are two things that you need to keep track of. First thing is income, and that's money coming in. So you need to keep track of the money coming in. All right? Then you need to keep track of the money coming out. Expenses. All right, now, why do you want to build up wealth? Well, the reason is simple. When you're young, you tend to work a lot. So you work kind of like way up here and you work a lot. But then the older and older you get, the less and less you are able to perform at the same level as you did before. Physically, it's just more difficult to do. Okay? So in most careers, you tend to kind of have your peak of performance right after you graduate, and then a few years after that, you get plenty of experience. But then it kind of drops after that. So you need to build up some wealth by the time you get to retirement so that you can basically quit working and be okay. All right. Now, the amount of money coming in, if it happens to be a lot, but then you also have a lot of expenses, then it's still very difficult to build up wealth. So in order to build up wealth, you got to control both sides. You got to be able to try to make a bit more money, but also try to control your expenses. So you need to try to cut your expenses regularly, and then you need to increase your income, or try to increase your income regularly. And that's really the only way to build up wealth over time. All right. And I got to tell you, one of the biggest misconceptions about rich people that most people will have is that rich people spend a lot of money. And yes, they do. But most rich people spend less money than what they make. And that's the point. In other words, they make more money than they spend, and that's what makes them rich. Sure, they might be spending a lot, but they make a lot more than what they spend. Otherwise, they will not be rich. So, in other words, they don't spend everything they make. They spend a lot, but it's compared to what they make. All right. So, learn to save money as soon as possible. What we do is we recommend to most people to try to save 10% a year every year, and start as soon as you can. You can spread the money, and you can think about putting 5% on your retirement account and then 45% on your savings account, or things of that sort. You also need to create what we call a rainy day fund. Everyone has problems at some point, financial problems, a flat tire, emergencies that come and go. And most people in the US don't have any money for those times. As a consequence of that, when an emergency comes, they are not ready. So you need to learn how to save money. And it's very, very difficult for most people because we live in a consumer society. So people are very used to spending, but not very used to saving. My recommendation is to keep it nice and simple. If you are young, just learn how to put $1 away every once in a while. Just grab $1 and put it on a piggy bank and just leave it there. And the entire purpose of leaving it there is for you to learn how to save, how to put money away and not touch it. Because most people, what they do is they save money, but then it gets to a certain level and they go, oh, I want to buy this. And then boom, there goes your savings. So you need to learn how to put money away and not look at it, because it is not for you to spend, it is for you to save. All right. My recommendation for a rainy day fund, it's about 6 months of expenses in your household. So if your household, say, spends about $3,000 a month, then you multiply that number times 6, and you need to have at least $18,000 saved in your savings account for a rainy day. All right. So the first thing you need to do after you're able to save is to get to that rainy day fund of 6 months of expenses. All right. I recommend to start saving yesterday. And believe me, everyone can learn how to save. All right, let me tell you a little bit about why when you get a degree, you're going to be ahead of the ball. Only 30% of the US population has a bachelor's degree or higher. Most people listening to my advice right now should consider a bachelor's degree. In case you did not know, colleges like Miami-Dade College offer today bachelor's degree that are fully certified. And on top of that, they are labor ready. In other words, local colleges are only allowed to provide degrees that are necessities in the areas where they are. So they have to prove to their state educators that that degree is needed in that particular area, and that's why they're offering it. So most of the degrees that you see available at Miami-Dade College or at local colleges are normally only available because those are jobs necessary in the area. The numbers that you see here, I took from the population survey by the Census Department in the year 2010. and I looked at the amount of people that had a particular degree, and noticed that in the US, between the ages of 25 and 64, only 1% of the population had a PhD. Only 3.1% of the population had a professional degree, only 10% of the population had a master's degree, and 30% of the population had a bachelor's degree. So the reason you're going to get paid more with a higher degree is simply because you are rarer. In other words, there are less people with that particular degree and that specific knowledge that you need in order to conduct the things that are required for particular jobs. So the higher the degree that you can go, the better. All right. This one right here is a little interesting, by the way, because a lot of the times when you look at your neighborhood and then you look at the people around you, you might be feeling like you're doing pretty well, but the thing is that you're only comparing yourself to the people around you. If you live in a really, really fluent neighborhood, in a really affluent neighborhood, then your expectations might be higher. But if you live in a sort of middle class neighborhood or a working class neighborhood, then you might feel like you're doing pretty well, but it's only around the people as compared to the people around you. And that may not be the best way to compare yourself. So please use a bigger pool basically to compare yourself. So let me show you this particular website. All right, so this calculator basically will find what percent are you compared to the amount of people in the US that pay income taxes. So let's say that you make $25,000 a year. Click on rank me, and you are on the 31 percentile of the people that pay income taxes or file taxes in the US. So you make you make higher than 31% of the population. Poverty, the line for poverty in the US is around $12,000 a year. And if you make about $12,000 a year as an individual, then you're on the 13th percentile. All right. Now, if you want to be about halfway in the US, then you need to make around $50,000. All right. If you want to be, say, a top 20 percenter, you got to make around $70,000. Oh, wait, I put 7,000. $70,000. Oh, no, not even that. Let's make it 80, see if that works. No, gotta make it a little higher than that. Make it 85. Ooh, no, gotta make 90. 90,000. Let's go. Oh man, we're not even there. Okay, let's make it 100,000. Okay, here we go. So if you make about 100,000 a year, then now you are on the 81 percentile. All right. All right. Now let's say you want to make it to the 1%. Okay. So let's say you want to make it to 1%, right way up here. All right. So start putting some money there. Let's try to make. Let's call it 150,000. Nope. All right. Let's make 200,000. 94. Ooh, almost there. Okay, let's make it 300,000. 97%. All right, let's make 350,000. Ooh, still at 97. All right, let's make it at 369,000. Ooh, 98%. All right, let's make it 380. Not there yet. Wow. Oh, wait, looks right here. An annual salary of 506,000 will put you at the top 1%. All right, so we got to make 506. What? 507. All right, there you go. So if you want to make it to the 99% or the top 1, you got to make about 507,000 a year. All right, so summarize. What do I ask you? What am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to stay in school. Don't get into too much debt. Learn how to manage your money, and you're going to be successful. I hope this was a useful presentation, and I hope to see you around back on my channel. This is Professor Choi. Have a good one.